everybody. Welcome to another episode of Everyday Strong with Dr. Michael G. Daniels. This is your host, CB Baker. We are finally back. We took what I like to call a COVID break, and I kept traveling back and forth, and I didn't want to put Pastor Daniels in any type of situations, so we just decided, let's just chill. So over the weekend, we had 3 shootings that happened in the Oceanfront in Virginia Beach, which is shocking in itself. Mm-hmm. But one shooting happened was an officer-involved shooting where the officers said the man that was shot allegedly was brandishing a weapon. Mm-hmm. And that's where the confusion comes in at, because a lot of people are saying he did not have a weapon.
Right.
And then some said it was weapon there on the ground, that they had it on him. Like, which one is it? Another thing, Dr. Daniels and people listening, is that the body cameras for these officers just magically was not on.
Yeah, when you take it in its totality, I think it just demonstrates, in my way of thinking, the inability for the police department to really trust the community. Because transparency means I trust you. They want us to trust them, but they don't feel like they can totally trust us. And here's why I say that. When you look at the totality of events that weekend, right, it lends itself to why a policeman could have just made an honest mistake.
Right.
But they won't just say we made an honest mistake, right? They want to vilify the guy, but that's not working right now too well. Because when you think about it, like the first shooting happened, right, where there was a crowd of people gathered together. And, some altercation took place, right? And they say it's gang related. But, I don't necessarily call it gang. I call it groups, because sometimes just because we live in the same neighborhood and we back each other up, don't mean we are an official gang.
Right.
That don't mean we really are Crips or Bloods or, what have you. But anyway, that's how they said it's gang. So I go along with the program. Okay. But so there was a shooting there, right? And so in that shooting, 8 people were injured. Okay. So, 8 injuries, one's very serious. We can't take away from the fact that was a serious crime.
Right.
One serious. So at that point, I realized that the policemen are on edge because there's been a serious shooting. So right. I get it. You're on edge. And then not long after that, there's a second shooting. And then the second shooting, again, it's because some altercation takes place. And during the crossfire, an innocent person who's just walking down the street gets shot.
Right.
Now, unfortunately, she dies. So again, that heightens you even more. So now you get to the third shooting, and no one has said why they shot him.
Right.
So first they said, right, he was brandishing a weapon, right? So when he got shot on Friday, they said he was brandishing a weapon. By Saturday, they said he had no weapon. Okay. By Sunday, they were saying that, wait a minute, we found a weapon, but we don't know if it's his.
Right.
By Monday, they were back saying that he was brandishing a weapon. And so how am I on the scene? But if he was brandishing a weapon, I didn't find it right away. How do you find it the next day or 48 hours later? If I'm holding a gun in my hand and you shoot me, the gun is going to fall out of my hand. And I don't think you would leave the scene until you found the gun.
Right.
It wouldn't be a next day find, so it seems like to me, and also let's say this, they initially characterized the guy as a gang member, right? Now, then when we found out who the guy was, right, that here's a guy who was a college graduate that was exceptional in high school, that faithfully attends church currently.
Right.
Actually, he's, Pharrell Williams' cousin. We not that makes you any better, but, he's Pharrell Williams' cousin. And he had a permit to carry a concealed weapon. So he could have had a weapon on him. I mean, He could have had one.
Right.
But how much sense does it make for a college graduate to see a policeman and point a gun at him?
Zero.
And they never said he pointed a gun. It's a difference between pointing a gun and brandishing a weapon. Brandishing a weapon simply means I showed you I had a gun. I somehow, made it visible to you in a way. You may perceive it as threatening, but that's not pointing the gun. See, pointing the gun, they wouldn't have said brandishing.
Right.
They would have said he tried to shoot us.
Right.
So it's conceivable, and I don't know, I wasn't there. Let's say let's use both scenarios, the worst case and the most likely case. Worst case is, let's say he had a gun on him. He got a permit to carry a gun. And he lifts his shirt up to show them, I got a gun. They don't know if he was the shooter or not.
Right.
So rather than just talking to him, they shoot first and ask questions later, and he's dead.
Right.
See, to me, that's the worst case scenario. Best case scenario, or none of them are best case, let me say it differently. But then what about if he had no gun that they miraculously found? What about the idea that you're down there in a major tourist area and where they have cameras on all those businesses? Virginia Beach has cameras.
Right.
Officers are trained by the policy. Whenever you are called to a scene that you know will cause you to be in contact with someone, you turn the camera on.
Right.
If you are called to a shooting scene, don't you know you're going to be chasing somebody?
Right.
Boom, camera should come on before you get out the car.
Yeah.
As my mother would say, walk like a duck and quack like a duck, chances are it's a duck.
It's a duck. Yeah. And this one is like Donald Duck.
All day long.
It's talking and everything. So that's the situation that is one that we talked yesterday about this. We were talking about the subject. And I think part of the problem is lawyers have gotten involved, and the law and lawyers have stopped people in general from saying these words. I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
I made a mistake. Mm-hmm. But you cannot do that, because if you do that, now the prosecutors got something they can work with to say, because you are admitting fault. So the defense attorney will tell you, don't ever say you apologize for it, because that's you admitting fault. Mm-hmm. But even if it was an honest mistake, let's say you're on a heightened alert, and because all this is going on, and let's say the gentleman lifts his shirt up to show he has a gun. Mm-hmm. Okay. He panics, boom, shoots the guy. Okay. Now he's dead. He should be fired. But now we got to go deeper than that. Mm-hmm. Like training. Mm-hmm. You know, the police officer should be calm in all situations, you know, especially in those type situations.
Right.
You know, so, and I'm not very popular for this opinion, but in England, the police officers don't have guns.
That's right. Just nightsticks.
Right. Certain officers got guns. So you inviting this, you inviting more mistakes, the more guns that's on the street. And that's where I say where my viewpoint is not very popular, you know, it's because a lot of people want to put more guns on the street to say, hey, give the people more guns and they'll be able to protect themselves. It's like, well, that's not actually happening.
Right. And we know that's a false narrative, right?
Right.
Because more people are dying. So obviously more guns didn't mean things were better. Right. And in this case, to me, if let's say I was a juror and the police officer said, you know, given the confines of everything that was going on, we didn't know who the shooter was. So when I saw that this gentleman had a gun, I reacted just on instinct, you know, because I didn't know if he would shoot at me or not. I can buy that quicker than I can buy, you know, all the stories that have been told.
Right.
You know, but the other thing is that, you know, to me, the first thing you would have done was to say, hey, put up your hands, right?
Right.
Not shoot first, but put up your hands. Even if he had a gun, is, you know, put your hands up or get down. You know, one of those things would have transpired. You know, not only that, when you think about what happened, he shoots on a Friday, right? Mm-hmm. They don't interview the police officer until Monday. Now, here's what they say, because he has Fifth Amendment rights.
Yeah.
He does. How many criminals do you know that they pick up on a Friday
Right.
and wait till Monday to interview them?
Right.
See, that's bogus right there, right? Because
Right.
at the time he does that, it becomes a criminal investigation.
Right.
So if it's a criminal investigation, you should treat him just like you treat all criminals,
Right.
which is, hey, we're interviewing you right now. Because I don't care who you are, you should be presumed innocent.
Right.
And so if they should presume everybody's innocent. So if you don't wait to question me as a civilian, then why are you waiting to question him? You know, both of us have Fifth Amendment rights. So both of us should have the same rights.
Right.
But when it's come to the police officer, they extend him an additional right. They say, we're going to not just, you have the right, but we're going to wait. You don't have, the policeman don't have to even say it.
Right.
It's an automatic process. They're just going to wait because they say he has Fifth Amendment rights.
I'm telling you right now, if I'm the police chief, I'm turning this over to the state police.
Well, and he said he was.
Right. Because there's a no-win situation for him conducting his own investigation.
Right.
You know, it's no win for him. And because we all know you can't control everything all your employees do.
No, you can't.
And I could just imagine the whole scenario going down, and the guy that shot the police officer that shot the man standing there, he, you know, hit the button, you know, the OS button. Okay, what do I do? And his partners that's around there, now they're in the middle of it too. Like, do we want to be on national news?
Right.
And the sad thing is, everything they did from that moment on was mistakes.
And put them on national
Don't
news.
put them on national news. What they was trying not to have happen, happened.
Right.
All they had to do was just do what they're supposed to do. And that's where I say, like, that's why I say the lawyers getting involved murky the water, because they're afraid to say certain things or to do certain. That's why they took the 48 hours, in my opinion. They took the 48. They got interviewed. They just want an official interview, you know.
Well, and think about this. Remember this too. Remember the initial thing they said was there were no eyewitnesses. Now, again, so here's what they're saying. That this young man, Donovan, if my memory is correct, was his name. He just happened to be walking down the street by himself.
Right.
You've been to Virginia Beach.
Yes.
How many 25-year-olds do you know that go to Virginia Beach by themselves? And he was a local person.
Right.
But no, you know, is that a norm for people to do?
No, it's not.
And when the last time you've been to Virginia Beach when it was nice outside, which was a nice day,
Right.
and there was nobody around walking? So they said there were no one, no, he had no friends close by.
Right.
No one saw it. All of a sudden, now they found one person. They said, this is what I've been told now, because the official report hadn't come out. But the unofficial report is they did find one person that saw it that could confirm that he was brandishing a weapon.
You know what? You know what's really sad? What's really sad in this whole conversation? Because everybody that's been to Virginia Beach has left out their hotel and walked to the 7-Eleven to get some sodas, snacks or something. You know, they don't necessarily want to go to a restaurant. They just want to get some snacks for the rooms for your kids.
Right.
But you're walking, walking by yourself. You're like, okay, you leave your wife or your girlfriend in the room. Like, I could take care of this. And you don't think that you got to worry about the police shooting you.
Right, absolutely.
You're thinking about, you're looking around the corner to see somebody's going to pop up, out, try to rob you. Your mindset is on that, not on the police. And that's where we're at right now.
It's sad, and I'm glad that the chief of police has decided, based on the community, because the community leaders put a lot of pressure to say, we want an outside investigator to come in. So, he has agreed to use the Virginia State Police to come in and investigate. But you could tell that there was some hesitancy,
right?
With the people in Virginia Beach, because this is the first time that's happened. Under the previous chief of police, he refused to have it. He refused. His thought process was always, we can do it in a non-biased way. And we both know That's the biggest lie. He knows it's a lie. I know it's a lie. There's no such thing as you can investigate yourself in a non-biased way. I don't care how much you think you can do it. It just doesn't happen.
Right.
Because you have an inherent bias. It's like when people say, I'm not biased at all. Everyone is biased. You have an inherent bias. You can walk into a room and see 3 black guys and 5 white guys, and you have a bias as to who you're going to go to talk to first. It don't mean you're racist. It just means there's an inherent bias. Right. You can walk into a room and see a guy your age and then see a guy that's 20 years older than you. You don't walk to the guy that's 20 years older than you first. You go to the guy that's kind of your age first.
Right.
You can walk into the room and see an ugly girl and a pretty girl. Okay?
Right.
And there's a bias.
Right.
Now, it might not mean you go to the pretty girl because your thought might be, she ain't going to talk to me no way.
Right.
So you might go to the ugly girl. And when I say ugly, I know beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So let me say less attractive girl. And you may go there and just talk to her because you feel like she'll talk to you. Right. Not that you're trying to, date or anything. I'm just saying there's always a bias. There's a bias as to what kind of alcohol you want to drink.
Yeah.
Do you want top shelf? Do you want, rock bottom shelf?
Right.
There's a bias to music. When people say they have no bias, they lie to themselves. And if you will lie to yourself, you will lie to me. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, that is true. So I wonder what is the next steps for us in the Hampton Roads area and in talking to the people at Virginia Beach? Because, I've talked to a lot of people that's local and they don't like going down to Virginia Beach. I still go. Mm-hmm. I don't encounter some of the stuff that other people talk about, but when I go there, I'm literally in my room to the boardwalk. I don't really go, outside of that, realm unless I'm going to a restaurant,
Right.
So right now I'm feeling like we're not welcome. And when I say we, I mean black people. We're not welcome in Virginia Beach. Now I will say this, the knuckleheads that was down there shooting don't help the situation at all.
Right.
They don't help.
And they should not be welcome. If you go there and you are violent and you're committing crimes, you should not be welcomed. I have no problem with that. But and let me say this. I had a meeting with the mayor one day, the current mayor, and I've said the same thing to the previous mayor as well. I said this to Will Sessoms, and I said this to Bobby Dyer. I said, listen, I have a timeshare in Virginia Beach. I refuse to use it. I always trade and go somewhere else. He said, why? I said, because I won't spend a dime down there. And he was like, why not? I said, because if I walk down Atlantic Avenue, I see stores that are brandishing Confederate flags all over the place. And I said to him, now, I know you don't see it as a problem.
Right.
But think of it this way. How many Hebrews do you think would be comfortable if there were swastika signs all down Atlantic Avenue?
Right.
You would never do that. But you don't have a problem having Confederate flags because in your mind, black folks should not be offended. See, Hebrews being offended by a swastika, they understand that. Black folk being offended by a Confederate flag, they want us to understand something.
Right.
Okay. So my point being is this. How can I feel welcome walking down Atlantic Avenue when you got a bunch of Confederate flags? My concept is you are saying who you want to cater to.
Right.
You don't want to cater to me. You want to cater to people that still want the South to rise again. That's how I feel. May not be true. That's the signal you get. Right. So I agree with you. So to me, now, granted, you can't tell a business what to sell, but I think that's something that the Chamber of Commerce has to look at and say, who do we want to welcome? Now, so as I said to this current mayor, I said, if I'm down there and a riot breaks out and there is one store that has a Confederate flag and one store that does not, and I only have one brick, which window do you think that brick is going through?
Right.
It is what it is. I tell you what I think that we have to do as black folk. Number one, we cannot allow this not to come to full fruition. we have to make sure as Black folk that we don't stay at home. When they call for rallies, we got to show up. If someone says to boycott because they're not giving us the whole truth, we got to do it. We cannot allow this to happen a second and a third time. This is not the first time this has happened.
Right.
Since I've been to Pastor Virginia Beach, this is the third time that I'm aware, and there are probably more times, but that I'm aware of them.
Right.
Okay. Each of the first two times, most Black folk did not do a thing. Okay. We cannot keep doing that. At some point, we got to stand up and say, you know what? It may not have affected me directly, but it still affects me. We got to make sure justice is preserved in this case, not just served, but preserved. We got to make sure that happens. And so we cannot let this go on without us being aware. We got to be there. When things happen, we need to be there. When they say they're going to have these press briefings, we need to be there in droves. If they decide they're not going to turn this over to the state police, we need to be there protesting, in a way that, shows that we are nonviolent, but we're not going to stand for it. We need to let the elected officials know, if you don't follow our lead, we will vote somebody in that will. And we really have to do those kind of things. We cannot keep the status quo, because the status quo is not healthy for not just Virginia Beach, but for America in general.
Yeah. I was sitting there thinking, maybe it is time for Black people to really protest or boycott the Oceanfront. Mm-hmm. And as a whole, because I guarantee you if we did, they would feel it.
Right.
I think Virginia Beach did a great deal with Pharrell, mm-hmm. with Something in the Water. Mm-hmm. And what was so magical about that was nothing happened. Right. Over 3 days, nothing happened. Mm-hmm. So he proved to everybody that young black people could get together for 3 days and there'd be no violence.
Right.
Where they, everybody in Virginia Beach was all scared. No, they planned it out. Mm-hmm. Everything went well. Mm-hmm. But even with all that, you still don't feel like you're welcome. And even all the money that we was able to bring in, still don't feel like we're welcome. Mm-hmm. I don't know any other solution other than hitting them in the pocketbook.
You are right, because as a wise man once told me, remember the golden rule. He who has the gold rules.
Yeah. Right?
It's just that simple. So that means what you said is right on the money, that we have to show them by our if everyone go, let's say, for example, we know that Buckrow Beach has always been welcoming to blacks, always.
Yes.
If all the events that we were going, and think about this, you don't have a lot of shootings at Buckrow Beach either. I'm not saying you've never had any,
right? But
you don't have a lot over there, right? What if everybody starts taking their money to Buckrow Beach? Mm-hmm. Just pull out, just pull out and watch Hampton thrive.
Right.
Watch their beach thrive. It'll change the dynamics. But I also think, again, we have to make sure that we get all the facts from this case. We have to make sure that any cameras that were there, we have to find out what's going to happen to a police officer that does not follow procedure.
Right.
We know he didn't follow procedure. I don't care what his mindset was. He did not follow procedure.
That's correct.
So what do you do now? Does nothing happen? Does he not get reprimanded? Does he just go off with no retribution? Something has to happen, right? And we have to find out why. See, all those little details need to be brought out.
Right.
And because if it doesn't, it's going to happen again. Here's what we know. We know there are cases in Virginia Beach where Virginia Beach Police Department know they have officers that are racist. Not speculate, know it. And I know it for a fact myself because I've been told this by people high up in the chain of command. And nothing has been done. Not one thing. Those officers still serve. How can you tell me that there is no bias?
Right.
When you know you have racist people on the police force? how can you say there's no bias if supervisors in the police force happen to be racist?
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely can't fix a situation with racist supervisors in the police force.
Right, because it sets the tone.
Right.
Right? The tone is set, it's acceptable.
Right. And the only way you can really stop that from happening is if people of color in droves was to apply to be police officers.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, that person has got one or two choices. He either got to change or resign. He's so racist, he's looking at 10 black cops underneath him. He's like, well, I can't keep acting, because you may get one or two to toe the line, beat Uncle Tom, but then the other ones could be like, wait a minute, this ain't right.
Well, that assumes that they select the black folk that apply for the job, right? That's
true. But I've been on record to say that one of the best protests that black people can do is not march at City Hall, is to go stand in line at the police station for applications.
No, I agree with you. They always say be the change, that you want, right? I don't think we can wait that long. And I'll tell you why I say that. It takes about 18 months for a policeman from time he puts in the application to get on the street. 18 months.
That's a long time.
That's a long time. Right. Right. Now, that's the minimum time, 18 months, right? Then you got to get promoted.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So you're really talking about by the time you can change. I'm not saying people shouldn't do that, but by the time that change comes, we're talking 5 years out, really.
Right.
Because you can't make sergeant for a minimum of 5 years. Right. I think it might be more than that, but because I know you can get you get master police officer. I think maybe 5 years. So you're talking 5 to 10 years out before those kind of changes take place. See, the other thing is this: black police officers shoot black folks just like white police officers do.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying it's not just a black-white thing. It is a bias in training as well, and that's one of the things that people don't want to talk about. They train biases into policemen. And I'll tell you, and I know this because I have attended a training session. And I may have told you this before, I don't know.
Yeah.
But so I know this because I know that's what, and although in their minds, they're not training biases, but they are. When you tell people that blacks are more likely to commit a crime,
right,
you put a bias in them.
You did.
If you tell people blacks are more likely to be violent, you put a bias in them. If you tell people that blacks are more likely to have guns that are, illegally, you've put a bias in there. You have trained the bias. So people come on board afraid of black people.
Yeah.
And if I'm afraid, whether I'm black or white, I'm afraid of you. And even if you grew up in the black neighborhood, you know that that's not true. You know that just because you're black don't mean you carry a gun.
Right, that's right.
And you know that just because you're black don't mean you can fight.
Right.
There are black folk I know have never been in a fight.
Never
been in a fight. But see, that's not, how do you, for example, how do you shoot a man that's running away from you and say you felt for your life?
Right.
You felt that, but the things they do, that's the kicker, is that when they say that, they mean it because they really do fear for their life, even though the person is trying to get away.
Right.
Okay. We had a member of the church who would never call their name out, a female that was beat down by a police person because they said they feared for their life.
Wow.
Female had no weapon. None. Okay. No weapon.
Right.
Was making a purchase. Okay. Showed a receipt.
That's
all right.
a shame.
And still happened. And the police officer, they fear for their life. We had another case, where we had a young man, okay, that same thing happened to him. Now, he was wrong in what he was doing. I won't say he was right. He had committed a crime and was running away from the police, okay? This young man at the time was about, he's about my height, so he's about 5'9". He weighed about 140 pounds. Police officer about 6'1", 6'2", probably about Chad's size, right? So, he was a pretty healthy guy.
Right.
Okay. Because the young man struggled, they also added a charge on assault to a police officer. Now, you tell me that police officer was fearing for his life.
Right.
Come on.
And then, that's the thing that really kind of gets me on those type charges. Is like, so I'm supposed to, like, when the canine's on you, then I'm telling you right now, if a dog jump on me, I'm snapping his neck.
Yeah, I know.
It's like I'm not thinking about what type of dog it is, and then now you charge me with assaulting a police officer, which is a dog.
Right.
And then
it's a reflex.
It's a reflex to defend yourself.
Yeah.
So, which brings me to this point, which is a strong what if, because I don't know what happened. But let's say Donovan did have a gun. Mm-hmm. You're walking down the street by yourself in Virginia Beach. Let's flip the whole script. You know of 2 other shootings that's happened. You're on alert.
Mm-hmm.
What is the police officer's uniform? What color is it?
Blue.
Right. Like navy blue, right?
Right, dark blue.
Dark blue. It's nighttime. So you see a dark figure pop around the corner and yell at you with his gun. Like, let's say his gun's out.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you go to defend yourself?
Mm-hmm. One would think.
Right. So, but that's what I'm saying in this whole scenario, because you don't know what happened. Mm-hmm. It very well could be that he feared for his life.
I'm sure he did. Let me tell you something. Even if he knew it was a policeman.
And that, my friend,
is
where the problem is.
Because I can tell you right now, I've been pulled over and had a weapon in my car, right, and I feared for my life. Okay? And I mean, really, I've been pulled over twice, since, once I did not have a gun, and I got pulled over in Clarksville, Virginia, a white officer. Chad was in the car, in a vehicle with me, and I didn't have my gun with me. But of course, if you have a concealed weapon license, when they run your license, it pops up.
Right. So
he come back to the car. First, he came and spoke to me and whatnot. I was speeding. He pulled me over. When he came back the second time, where's the gun? Like that, just like that. Where's the gun? I said, I don't have a gun with me. Yes, you do. Where's the gun? And I said, sir, I don't have a gun with me. Well, you have a permit, and legally you have to tell me you got a gun. I said, I know I do. I don't have a gun with me. I have a permit to carry a gun, but I don't have my gun with me.
Right.
Well, I'm just, and his whole demeanor just changed, right? Now, I'm nervous now because I'm thinking, this fool gonna mess around and shoot me. I ain't told him I ain't got a gun.
Right, right.
I got pulled over heading to South Boston by a police officer. This was a black police officer. He pulled me over. I did what you're supposed to do because I did have my gun at that time. And I said, sir, before you ask me any questions, I have something I need to tell you. Then he put his hand on his gun.
Right.
And I said, I do have a gun in my vehicle, and it is loaded. And he said, well, okay. Then he relaxed. He said, well, since you told me, I'm glad you told me. And he said, well, you got a permit? I said, yeah, I do. And so then he said, well, no problem. He said, I'm going to go back and run your license. If you don't have any warrants, I'm going to let you go. And I said, okay, I appreciate that. And he, and that's what he did. But I'm saying the whole while, when they're approaching me, I'm nervous. So I'm always thinking to myself, should I even carry my gun with me? Even though I got a permit. I'm carrying my gun because I'm scared of other folk.
Right.
But I'm just as scared of the policeman pulling me over with me, having my gun.
Right. It's and that's the sad case that I don't know if in the next generation will be able to fix it. Now, it's already gone for my generation. But I'm hoping for like maybe my kids or my grandkids that whole notion would go away. Like I would honestly say when growing up in, I bounced around a lot, but when I was in Texas and I would get pulled over or if I encountered the police, long story short, I grew up white. Mm-hmm. My other black friends, they would be scared to talk to the police officers and not talking and stuff. And it's like, it's just a person. Mm-hmm. Like I see a person that's coming to ask me a question. So I would talk to them with sense and then they would calm down. Now, what's crazy is my friends was mouthing off. I'm like, they ain't done nothing to you. Now in this scenario, we're in high school at a park after dark. You know, so they're like, what are y'all doing?
Mm-hmm.
And this is how crazy this was. There was ducks out there. I found some bread. That was literally feeding the ducks. When the person came and asked me, what are you doing? I said, I'm feeding ducks.
Right.
It's like, but I'm talking with the person.
Right.
We have gotten to this point where now things have become so adversarial between the two, and we can't even have a regular conversation. Just like how you was trying to have a conversation with the first police officer, and he was not listening with his ears to what you were saying. It's like, I do not have a gun.
Right.
No, yes, you do. No, I do not. You're required by law. I know this. I just don't have a gun. So it's the same answer.
And it ain't gonna change because you asked me the question 3 times.
Right. But you're lying because you're black.
Right. And that's the thing. And that is not a new phenomenon because I've been black for a long time now.
Right.
And I gotta tell you that I'm not saying I haven't had white police officers that give me the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
But I'm saying the history of how we have been treated plays a lot into it. You know, if you know, my first encounter with a police officer was not pleasant. It was extremely demoralizing the way he treated me. I'm a 9-year-old kid,
right.
And he's treating me the way he did to purposefully put fear in me. You know, so I'm not going to see a police officer from that point on as a ally because you purposefully put fear in me, right? And so, and I think that's a part of it. And that's why I'm saying, you know, I mean, I don't know what the next generation is going to face. I do know I don't feel any different now about policemen than I felt when I was 9 or 10 or 12 years old, you know, and I'm 3 generations removed now. You know, I figure that because I'm figuring every 20 years you get a generation, basically.
Right.
I'm 3 generations removed, and I don't see it being better. You know, I
think things are coming more to light now.
Right, we're seeing it more.
Right.
Well, let me put it differently. We saw it then. It ain't like we didn't see it. The difference is the reaction to white people to it.
Right.
Black folk were getting hung by policemen a long time ago, and everybody knew about it. It's just that people wanted to act like it wasn't happening.
Right.
Because it wasn't like visibly popping up on the news but they, you know, it wasn't like they didn't know it.
Right.
You know, it was the way. Let's look at the history of police.
Yeah.
The history of police was to round up black folk.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, when you think about like the instance, and you know, I look at this and you know, every time it happens in a neighborhood where a police officer kills a black man, unarmed or armed, there's one thing that happens every time. The first thing they do is try to make the victim a villain.
Yeah, they do.
Right? The first thing they did was talk about this young man like he was, you know, some thug that was out to hurt people. It just so happened that boy was a college graduate and had played football, and his white coach came on and said, no, that's not the young man I know.
Right.
You know, he was bright, you know, he was this, he was helpful, he was, you know, and lifted him up. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that kind of forced him to kind of, wait a minute, to kind of change the dialogue. And you know, and that's what they always want to make they always want to make it seem like everyone is a criminal off the bat. Right. And that's how their mentality, that's how it appears their thinking is always. When it concerns you black, you are a criminal anyway. And so we're going to look for something to prove you are a criminal. You know, I may have smoked pot when I was 18. I'm 62 years old now. If I get shot, they're going to go back and say, you know what? When he was 18, he smoked pot. When he was this, he did this. Right. And so because of that, that's why we shot him. Wait a minute.
Right.
What's that got to do with today?
Right.
You know, it's just like the way they're doing with George Floyd, right? You know, they're paying him to be this horrible guy. He had drugs in his system, and he was arrested a while back for some drugs. Well, what's that got to do with you putting your knee on his throat today?
Right.
You know,
absolutely nothing.
I don't care if he just robbed a bank 5 minutes ago. He's innocent until proven guilty.
But the people that do the mass shootings, they get walked to the police car.
Walked and protected.
Right.
See, and they're treated like they're innocent until proven guilty. They put bulletproof vests on them.
Right.
So no one else will harm them. You know, all this kind of stuff, right? They don't put their knee on their neck. They don't go through all this when they arrest them. But when they arrest these young black, well, they ain't all of them ain't young, but when they arrest black folk, and you better not look like you want to run.
Right.
So, but,
well, we're at the 40-minute mark.
Oh, my goodness. Time flies when you're telling the truth.
All right. So anything else, Dr. Dale, you'd like to bring before we close out?
No. I just want people not to forget and not to be complacent. We need to make sure that this is a call to action, that we support those families, the ones that were innocently harmed. They need to be supported as well. And I'm not saying abandon the police. I'm saying we just need to make sure that we get this right.
That's right. Thank y'all so much for tuning in to another episode of Everyday Strong with Dr. Michael G. Daniels. This is your host, CB Baker. Till next time.